Good morning. I am Councillor Tim Needham, Chair of Council, and I would like to welcome you all to this extraordinary full Council meeting. Please be seated. Before we start, I wish to set out the housekeeping arrangements for this meeting. Firstly, we are not expecting a fire practice, but in the event of hearing the fire alarm, please leave the chamber and turn right. Proceed down the stairway and through the emergency exit onto the ground floor. Please assemble in the public square in front of Cast, beyond the fountain. Anybody with mobility issues should wait in the refuge area near the lift and use the intercom to call for assistance. This meeting will be recorded and published on the Council's YouTube channel. By entering the Council chamber, you are accepting that you will be recorded and your images will be retained and broadcast by the Council. If anyone is intending to record or film any part of today's meeting, please ensure that this does not disturb proceedings. To avoid any unnecessary disruption, please ensure mobile phones are switched to silent mode. As we have a new microphone system, I would just like to remind members that the large rectangular button at the bottom is the one to press if you wish to speak. The light on the microphone will light up green and will change to red when it's your turn to speak. And you will be switched on by David, who is operating the system. Please do not press your button more than once, as this will cancel your request to speak. Once you have finished speaking, press the button to switch off your microphone. If there is any feedback while speaking, please gently move the microphone towards you and this should rectify the problem. As this is an extraordinary meeting to discuss the motion on the agenda, there are no opportunities for questions or statements from the public or from elected members to the Mayor, Cabinet, Chairs of committees or officers. Thank you. Item 1. Apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillors Majid Khan, David Carroll, Simin Waller, Alexander Jones. Are there any other apologies for absence? Okay, thank you. Item 2. To consider if the public and press are to be excluded from the meeting. Well, there's plenty of them here, so let's hear what it says. There are no exempt items on today's agenda. However, the motion detailed at agenda item 4 makes reference to Doncaster Sheffield Airport lease, which is a confidential document due to its commercial sensitivity. The report on today's agenda also includes Appendix 3, which contains commercially sensitive information. If members wish to discuss the contents of the lease or information contained in Appendix 3, I propose we adjourn the meeting, exclude the press and public, and move into private session. Item 3, declarations of interest. If anyone has an interest in any item on today's agenda, please can they declare it now or as soon as it becomes known to them. Has anybody got any interest to declare? Okay, thank you. Item 4. Motion to rescind borrowing decision on the 27th of November 2025 in relation to Doncaster Sheffield Airport project. Before I ask Councillor Ward to propose his motion, I understand that Monitoring Officer Scott Focus wishes to provide some advice to assist members in considering this matter. Scott.
Councillors, before you begin the debate on the substantive motion at item 4, I need to remind you of the content of paragraph 66 of the accompanying report. The implications of the motion are significant, and it is a requirement of good governance that members be provided with the necessary information and potential implications of any decision before reaching that decision. The report provided in your agenda papers has been produced in order that members may meet their duties to ensure that any decision reached upon the motion and its implications is made on good decision-making grounds and is safe from legal challenge. Members should ensure that they reach their decisions today, having fully considered all of the relevant information in front of them before making that decision. Decisions made must be reasonable and balanced, based upon facts presented to you, both within today's debate and the papers in front of you. If the substantive motion is agreed as it appears on the agenda paper, the movers are further advised that they should identify how they propose to meet the financial costs detailed within the report. I must advise members that if this is not done, that any decision to adopt the unamended motion may be vulnerable to legal challenge from interested parties. Whilst the risk of such a challenge cannot be quantified at this moment, members should remain aware of the possibility of such a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. To manage the meeting effectively, I will ask that we begin by discussing this motion in open session. If, as we go along, members wish to raise confidential issues, please make this known before you speak. We can keep a note and consider those later in one dedicated exempt session. This will avoid the press and public having to repeatedly leave and then rejoin the meeting. Please do not raise any exempt matters during the public session. If you are unsure whether the issue you wish to raise is exempt, please seek clarification first without disclosing any details of the exempt matter. I also confirm the usual rules of debate will apply, and members are allowed to speak once on the motion and once on any amendment. If there are any, that is. In addition, the proposer of the motion, Councillor Ward, has a right to reply on any amendments and on the substantive motion. As a final reminder, this is not an appropriate forum to raise concerns regarding the conduct or actions of individual officers or members, as these processes sit outside of this meeting. Thank you. Councillor Ward, do you wish to propose the motion to Council?
Thank you, Chair. I have nothing to say on this motion.
Okay, thank you. I understand the seconder of the motion is Councillor Rachel Reid. Councillor Reid, would you like to speak?
I would like to speak, if that's okay, Chair. I would like to second this motion. It is not a motion against aspiration, ambition or regeneration. It is a motion about governance, transparency and whether councillors were given the information necessary to make one of the biggest financial decisions in this council's history. In November 2025, members were asked to support borrowing of up to 57 million and commitments approaching 193 million for the reopening of Doncaster Sheffield Airport. That was a huge decision with huge consequences for taxpayers across our borough. But what we now know is this: councillors were not given the full picture before that vote took place. The Mayor herself confirmed that the contents of the superior lease were deliberately withheld from members. That alone should concern every person in this chamber, regardless of party, because hidden within that lease were provisions that went to the very heart of the project's viability and risk. Provisions allowing Peel to terminate the lease under certain circumstances. Provisions linking to planning decisions made by this very council, acting as the local planning authority, and provisions requiring passenger numbers to hit thresholds that later projections appear unlikely to meet. Those are not minor administrative details, they are material facts. If members had known that the council could spend nearly 200 million while still being exposed to the possibility of losing control of the site, many may well have asked different questions or reached different conclusions. We must also confront another uncomfortable truth. Planning committee members were apparently kept unaware of these lease clauses so they could make what was described as an independent planning decision. But independence does not come from withholding information. Independence comes from informed judgment. You cannot claim transparency while selectively concealing the very risks that councillors are expected to scrutinise. What makes this situation even more troubling is that the public did not learn of these issues through openness from administration. Had that not happened, would members even know today about the termination clauses, the passenger thresholds or the structural conflict sitting at the centre of this agreement? That is the real issue before us today. This motion does not cancel the airport. It does not prevent future proposals and it does not prejudge the merits of reopening aviation at Doncaster Sheffield Airport. What it does say is simple. Decisions involving hundreds of millions of pounds must be made honestly, transparently, and with all material information placed before elected members. That is not an unreasonable standard. It is the minimum standard the public should expect. Residents watching this will not care about procedural manoeuvres or political spin. They will ask a basic question. How were councillors asked to approve this level of borrowing without seeing the full lease terms? And frankly, that is a question this council still struggles to answer convincingly. The motion before us is therefore both reasonable and necessary. It calls for rescission because the original decision was taken on materially incomplete information. And it calls for scrutiny because the public deserve answers. And it calls for independent examination because confidence in governance has clearly been damaged. If this administration believes everything was done properly, then it should welcome transparency rather than resist it. No council should fear scrutiny if it has acted correctly. Today is about restoring trust in decision-making, protecting taxpayers and ensuring that no member of this chamber is ever again asked to vote blind on a matter of such scale and consequence. I urge members to support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Does any other member wish to speak on this motion? Councillor Charity, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion, please. Of course, Chair. I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion.
Okay, thank you. Do we have copies of the amendment, and if so, can they be passed round to members, please? Councillor Charity, is there a seconder for this amendment? Do you have?
Yes, Chair. I believe Councillor Carl Hughes will second.
Do you wish to say anything, Councillor Wood? Okay. Right, sorry, Jason, you need to speak.
Yes, Chair. If I could introduce the motion. Sorry, the amendment. Thank you. Chair, my family lives in Conisbrough, on the street where I grew up. When this council borrows 57 million, it does so in their name and in the name of every household in Doncaster. That is the question. Whose name is on this loan and who pays if it goes wrong? Labour signed the lease in March 2024 with no funding agreed. That was a gamble with Doncaster's money. Labour brought the 57 million borrowing vote to this chamber in November 2025 without putting the lease before members. Labour now accepts the deal has to be renegotiated before the money can be released. That is Labour's gamble and Doncaster's bill. Reform UK supports reopening DSA. Today, we back the full 57 million with safeguards Labour did not bring in November. The lease shown to members, the numbers independently verified, the general fund protected, and an exit strategy if the deal fails. They will tell you reform will kill the airport, but the airport was lost in 2022 on Labour's watch. The airport was put at risk again in November when Mayor Ross Jones brought the borrowing vote without the lease being put in front of members. And every time reform raised governance concerns, the council blocked, delayed, or watered them down. The people protecting the airport today are the people tabling this amendment Labour failed to bring. The Mayor of South Yorkshire has been in the media recently defending his deal. He tells us there was 1,000 pages of material. He tells us the project is sound, and he tells us the risk is manageable. What he does not tell us is why Doncaster Scrutiny Committee saw one report out of 16. What he does not tell us is why this council took a vote to borrow on a deal his own authority now accepts must be renegotiated before he releases the money. What he does not tell us is why, when Reform councillors started asking the hard questions, his answer was a private political email to opposition councillors, not a formal letter to this council, not a safeguard placed before members, not what a 57 million decision deserves. Mayor Coppard may claim I had information, but I am not his courier, and I am not an Amazon delivery driver for Simca documents. Disclosure was owed to 55 members in this chamber, not one councillor on a separate body. Reform UK calls again for Mayor Ross Jones to resign. And we know she won't. Labour does not do accountability. Instead, it does secrecy, excuses, and blame shifting. Ross Jones and senior officers responsible must be kept as far from DSA decisions as the rules of this council will allow. They signed off a deal that has to be renegotiated. They kept it from members. That is negligence Doncaster cannot afford. In last Thursday's local elections, the voters of South Yorkshire spoke. They sent Labour a message and they turned to Reform. Labour collapsed. Reform surged. From Sheffield to Barnsley, council after council, the verdict was the same. 2 days later, the Mayor of South Yorkshire wrote to Reform councillors in private to lecture us about leadership, to demand we back 57 million on his word. Coppard ignored the voters. Today, every Labour councillor here decides whether to do the same. Chair, every councillor here makes a choice. Safeguards or blind trust, Doncaster or Labour. Reform is here because the people of this borough sent us. They sent us because Labour had failed Doncaster on the airport, on local services, and on the basic honesty this borough deserves. We do not work for the Mayor of South Yorkshire. We do not answer to Simca, and we do not take instructions by email from Oliver Coppard. We work for Doncaster. If Labour rejects these safeguards today and the airport fails, the responsibility will sit exactly where it belongs. Labour's gamble, Doncaster's bill, but not in our name. Chair, I move the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Charity. Does any member wish to speak on this? Sorry, Carl, you need seconded. Councillor Wood, were you seconding? Oh, sorry, yes, please do a seconding.
Go. Thank you. Right, it's gone red now. Thank you. Chair, thank you. I am here to second the amendment, and I do so because it finally addresses the single issue that has undermined confidence in this programme for far too long: transparency. The opportunity to resolve this arose 6 months ago, when I took up the role of Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. In fact, the very next day, on the 24th of October 2025, I wrote formally to senior officers requesting direct access to decision-critical documents. Specifically, I requested the full DSA business case, the Simca review of DSA, and all supporting financial, risk and governance documents underpinning the proposed gain share allocation and funding model. Those requests were not unreasonable. They reflected the lawful entitlement of elected members to the information required to discharge our fiduciary duty before authorising borrowing of this scale. Subsequently, it was stated publicly that 16 documents had been offered to scrutiny. For the record, OSMC received one unredacted document, the Subsidy Advice Unit report, already published online, and an approximately 80% redacted version of the DSA business case. The DSA lease was not made available until after it was leaked into the public domain, and only then under a strict non-disclosure agreement, which even stated initially that councillors could not discuss the document with anyone. OSMC looks forward to seeing the renegotiated lease when it is finalised. The Simca review document was refused and replaced instead by an online Teams briefing. This is not disclosure, it is not a substitute for scrutiny, and it does not satisfy members' statutory rights of access to information. As a former police officer, I operated under strict disclosure requirements throughout my career. When serving disclosure notices, I was not allowed to replace evidence with briefings or summaries. I was required by law to provide the material itself. The same principle applies here. The laws governing elected members' access to information are not optional, and in this case, they were not complied with. At that point, it became clear that what was being presented as scrutiny risked becoming little more than window dressing, explanation without evidence. That is what damaged trust, and that is what fuelled the frustration felt by many members of this chamber. However, and this is the critical point, this amendment changes that. It doesn't ask members to forget what has happened, it corrects it. The amendment stitches scrutiny and audit into the fabric of the DSA programme. It ensures that members will now receive proper access to evidence, that oversight will be continuous, and that due diligence will not end tonight, but will continue for the lifetime of DSA. This matters not just for governance, but for unity. Members have been criticised, misrepresented, and in some cases subjected to unacceptable abuse and threats, simply for asking legitimate questions. This amendment gives the Council a way to move forward together on a properly informed basis. That is why I'm prepared to second this amendment and support the funding going ahead. Chair, this allows us to not only proceed, but to proceed properly, and I commend the amendment to the Council.
Thank you, Councillor. There is an amendment that's been proposed and seconded. Do members wish to request an adjournment to look at it, or are we happy to carry on with the debate? Okay, so let's adjourn then for 15 minutes. So please return back for, say, 22. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Please be seated. Okay, thank you. Does any member wish to speak on this matter? Jane Cox, please.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I welcome the amendment made to the motion, I have to go back to the fact that the Mayor has executive power. So whilst I appreciate we would like more scrutiny, we need to go back to March 2024, where the original lease was signed. The original lease was signed by a Rule 16 decision. And for those of you in the chamber who don't know what Rule 16 is, it is a decision made by the Mayor and the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, which means there can be no call-in. Sorry? I don't make the decision. You signed the decision, though. You signed the decision. That there can be no call-in, so no councillor in this chamber can call that decision in or scrutinise it in any way, shape or form. So we have to bear in mind that should this motion go through, there is still the option for Rule 16. There is still the fact the Mayor has executive power, and there is still the transparency issue that we have currently.
Thank you. Councillor Rimmer, please.
Thank you, Chair. This debacle began long before Reform UK became a party joining local government elections. The lease for the airport had been accepted long before Reform UK joined Doncaster Council as a majority. The Labour leadership was such that before Reform UK, they would tell their members what to vote, and they did. So for Reform UK to question anything was an affront to their superiority in their eyes, and it immediately became political. Labour and the council officers wouldn't accept that their decisions were questionable. Every question put forward was reform causing trouble. Every question was a struggle to answer. The lease is a problem because of Labour. The gain share delay is a problem because of Labour. Today's late decision is because of Labour. The lack of information is because of Labour. The secrecy in decisions is because of Labour. The lack of openness and transparency is because of Labour. Any delay in the airport moving forward is because of Labour. Delaying opening dates is because of Labour. Labour has failed in the negotiating of this motion, and that is down to its leadership. Mayor Jones should resign.
Councillor Rachel Reid, please.
Let me be honest about where responsibility for this situation actually sits. It does not sit with councillors elected in May 2025. We inherited this position. The responsibility lies with the people who negotiated and signed a lease agreement so poor that elected members of this council were not even allowed to see the full details of it. We are talking about major financial commitments and long-term risk for the people of Doncaster, yet councillors were expected to make decisions without having full access to the agreement itself. That is not proper scrutiny and it is not acceptable. When agreements of this scale are negotiated so badly that councillors are denied sight of them and taxpayers are exposed to huge levels of risk, serious questions about accountability have to be asked. In any other organisation, those responsible for negotiating and signing such a terrible deal would be considering their positions. In fact, I'd expect it. A lot of members felt the original process was rushed and that scrutiny was brushed aside in favour of getting a vote through quickly. Whether people supported the original decision or not, I think most residents would expect councillors to actually be allowed to see and scrutinise agreements before being asked to back them. This amendment is simply about transparency, accountability and protecting the public interest. That is our job as councillors and that is why I support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I feel we could have avoided this meeting today had we made a better decision earlier on in November, but obviously there's been plenty of water under the bridge since then. However, I am somewhat perplexed with this original motion in the original document. Obviously, this calls for effectively we guillotine and we leave things as they are, and potentially that would lead to a lack of funding for the airport and therefore we wouldn't be able to continue. We would avoid all the borrowing, but we would also, if we were to back this original motion, we would accept 48.6 million of costs, and that would therefore be a loss, a paper loss to the council. That's obviously a disaster waiting to happen. Therefore, another amendment's come in. This one doesn't seek to rescind, but continue. Well, actually, if we continue, although we have a higher level of scrutiny, which, don't get me wrong, is incredibly noble, and we should have had that all along, but if we just continue as we are, actually, eventually, in the long run, we are going to get ourselves into a position, we can't avoid it, where we're going to have to borrow more because, as we know in these types of projects, actually, financial commitments made now, you know, the budgeting arrangements will be such that in future we will probably end up having to borrow even more money. So this 193 figure there actually could well increase over time. I don't think that's avoidable, and I think although we haven't talked about it literally in either motion, it is there in the spirit of what everyone's talking about. However, I can't help but think, actually, really, you should have brought this motion in originally. It doesn't need to be an amendment. This could have been a standalone motion. There should have been no debate about rescinding totally, because obviously rescinding totally, as this proposes, that would have meant effectively accepting almost £50 million worth of losses. Well, how could anybody, regardless of party, I mean, Karl Marx, Margaret Thatcher, neither of them could have, accepted such a loss as that? It would have made us look wholly incompetent, which goes back to what I said in November. This, and all of it, the cumulative impact it's had on this issue, just highlights the totally inept way we make decisions in this town, notwithstanding very noble sentiments about scrutiny and why we need to scrutinise things. I mean, as my colleagues in the Finningley ward have pointed out, it's, the airport is actually situated in the Finningley ward. The level of information they've had sometimes has been paltry. I don't want to go back down that route now, but I just can't help but think, actually, we're doing ourselves and our town a disservice by not making it clear. This would mean borrowing lots more money. This would mean losing lots of money. So really, either way, whatever we do, we're up a gum tree. And unfortunately, we didn't need to be there had we made a better decision in November. That's the point we need to justify to the public. Not necessarily us, because we're against, and we've been very consistent as a group. But you are going to have to justify somewhere along the line the amount we have lost. And if we don't see a return on this investment, we could well end up, with a, well, for those in the chamber old enough to remember, a British Leyland-like situation, a Doncaster Leyland, if you like.
Thank you. Councillor Aston, please.
Thank you, Chair. In November 25, as leader of Reform, I asked my fellow councillors to support the Mayor's recommendation of accepting gain share funding, and in doing so cover DSA start-up costs. Reform's concerns focus mainly on airport performance and passenger throughput. At that time, we were informed the lease was commercially confidential and could not be made available. I recall senior council officer telling us that financially there was nothing left to tell us about. Based on the information provided, I requested the Reform team to vote to accept the gain share funding, and as you know, we did just that. Councillor Allen. We now learn that the confidentiality of the lease was no more than a smokescreen. We soon established that councillors had a legal right to view the confidential document that had been concealed from us. Sight of the lease revealed an appalling piece of negotiation. But that is not my opinion. It is the view also of the Labour Mayor of South Yorkshire, Oliver Coppard. The Mayor is so concerned about the disastrous lease that he is withholding the gain share monies until the lease is renegotiated to his satisfaction. It is not just Reform that now has major reservations. As the person most responsible for the November decision, I'm disappointed with the people who preached collaboration, but in fact were implementing a very different strategy, one of concealment and obfuscation. It could be argued I should have listened to the loudest of our naysayers, and that argument actually could be quite strong. The airport saga has certainly swept away my initial trust and goodwill I had upon entering this council. Although the Mayor bandied the word around, there was never any real collaboration, and I don't believe any was ever intended. Documents were hidden from us as Labour desperately fought to get its grand project moving. To enable her re-election, the Mayor even promised the people of Doncaster that flights would take place in 2026, knowing they would not happen. We've seen through this nonsense now. We're asserting our rights to information and data, and the OSMC and audit teams will be dispatching the DSA, will be watching the DSA project like hawks. We shall hold our 4 airport entrepreneurs feet to the fire and ensure Doncaster taxpayers and the people actually who placed us here are kept well briefed. We shall have transparency in future. Doncaster Sheffield Airport is your project, Mayor Jones. Should this aircraft fall from the sky, you will be held culpable, and we will ensure the people of Doncaster are made very aware of that. Chair, I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll speak plainly just to cut through all the noise here. You agreed a bad deal. You tried to cover it up and get it through. Now we have to decide between throwing Doncaster people's money down the drain or use it to bet on a lame horse with a jockey who thinks the finish line is negotiable. The jockey should resign.
Councillor Blow, please.
Thank you, Chair. Why are we here again? We're here again because we took the Labour Mayor on a word. If it wasn't for the Yorkshire Post leaking the lease, we would never have known about probably the worst lease ever signed. Now we know about this, it makes total sense why it was signed off under a Rule 16 in 2024, so proper scrutiny couldn't be given in a democratic way. Taxpayers' money has been used to fund a political tool for Mayor Coppard and Mayor Jones. I would ask the question, does the Mayor, Cabinet members included in the Rule 16 and lease negotiators need to resign on the back of this? If this loan is approved today, I would expect Oliver Coppard to put his money where his mouth is and sign off on the gain share.
Thank you. Councillor Booth, please.
Thank you, Chair. When I was elected in May last year, I didn't sign up for the airport debate. I knew very little about it at the time, and all I knew was that the reopening of Doncaster Sheffield Airport had become the centrepiece of the Mayor's re-election campaign. What I thought I was signing up for was representing the people in my ward, helping residents, supporting families and dealing with the real issues affecting everyday people. That's what I love doing because helping people is in my nature. But for over a year now, I've sat back in this chamber and step by step, I've felt like I've been told how I'm expected to vote on this airport. I've lived and breathed this issue for over a year, while my constituents and wider people of Doncaster have continued to struggle with the issues that matter most to them. With the issues that matter most are, we promised the airport would reopen by spring 2026. Yet here we are again, still discussing it, still debating it, while residents are asking questions about jobs, housing, local services and support for communities across Doncaster. On many occasions, I've asked for us to work cross-party, together to truly put Doncaster back on the map. That's a phrase we hear often, Mayor Ross Jones, put Doncaster back on the map. But putting Doncaster back on the map isn't achieved through political digs, division or comments suggesting opposition councillors don't do anything or don't turn up. Every single one of us in this chamber works hard for our communities. We all give 110% in our own way and we all contribute. The people of Doncaster don't want constant political point scoring. They want action. They want honesty. And above all, they want councillors who remember why they were elected in the first place, to serve the people that should always come first. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Emmanuel Cracken, please. Jan, please.
Thank you, Chair. During last year's campaign, Balby South constituents declared that they want the airport open. Now, having it open just to have a shutter a few years later is unacceptable to me. This amendment delivers on an extra degree of certainty to the opening of the airport. And to be honest, the airport shouldn't have been closed in the first place. In order to get into office, Labour has signed an extremely detrimental agreement with the airport landlord, and this has and will cost the people of Doncaster. I'm quite sure that they would have never been so negligent with their own wallets. Reform has tried to fix this mess and mitigate the damage, and due to our limited authority, this is the most we could get. Once Reform takes the mayorship, we will be able to expose all that Labour has done and negotiate and renegotiate all kinds of bad deals that they've agreed to, because sooner or later, Doncaster will be free of this failing and irresponsible administration. Thank you.
Councillor Kidger, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair. Promotion. Right. This motion has not been easy for Reform councillors. It's been the result of much heated debate and quite a bit of gnashing of teeth. There's no good or right option. We have chosen the lesser of the evils. The stumbling block in main is the lease. The lease was signed in 2024 by CDC, and on being elected, Reform councillors were informed in briefings that due diligence had been carried out and expert advice had been obtained. Details were kept secret on the grounds of confidentiality, and with hindsight, it looks like due diligence wasn't very diligent and expert advice was either incorrect or ignored. The information given in officer briefings over the last year has since been described as aspirational rather than factual, and the November vote was largely based on these. In January 2026, the lease was leaked to the press and in part published. I thank the press. Councillors were later offered sight of the lease on signing a non-disclosure document. No one did. For some today, it might be the first time they've seen the lease. An informed member of the public has contacted me and he says, this should be illegal, and it probably is. We have been denied the opportunity to ask questions on this or other matters relating to the airport. The future of the airport is now firmly in the hands of Simca, Mayor Jones and Peel Holdings. Being a mayoral authority, Reform constitutionally can have no part in any current or future negotiations on this matter. Until a satisfactory outcome has been achieved, gain share money and thus the airport are effectively on hold. Whether this process takes days, weeks or months is unknown. Reform will aggressively monitor through Management and Oversight Committee, along with audit, to ensure effective management and financial scrutiny. The Mayor wants the airport to open. Reform want it to succeed. That is the difference. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Knight, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Jones, Chair, and one and all. Mayor, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Myself being a long-serving member of the University of Life, have in the past worked within corporate business. The lease contract between Peel, CDC and FDL is, to my thinking, one, if not, one of the worst I've ever seen. In principle, I seek, beyond reasonable doubt, an equitable contract. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that if the elected councillors had remained unchanged at the elections of May 2025, the lease would not receive the scrutiny that it is now being given. We all here have to exercise a duty of care with duty of due diligence. To date, DSA has been and is a liability with no financial return. The site possesses an exceptional amount of business possibilities. Many could have been in place before today. As I understand, there are now over 50 personnel employees on site, all working towards a common goal, and that is to see DSA succeed into a thriving airport. Today, this council will be voting on the future direction of DSA. Mayor, promises previously made by yourself have been broken, in turn raising concerns. Today, this council will vote to move should this council vote to move forward with DSA, it will be in good faith that all involved give 100%. enthusiasm and effort could create an airport for everyone to be proud of. I thank you, Mayor, Chair, one and all.
Councillor Platter, please. Sorry, Councillor Plater.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't intending to speak, but I just can't hold it in. Whichever way you look at it, the deal that was made with Peel about the airport was a rotten deal. And it was a deal that no real business person would ever sign up to, that had walked away. The deal was done in secret, without scrutiny, without any openness that should have been there. That's a fact. This amendment seeks to mitigate the bad decisions made by the previous council. This amendment tries, if it's possible, to save money for the Doncaster Council taxpayer. Let's be clear, and let's be crystal clear. Reform aren't the bad guys in this. Labour have that. They are the bad guys. They failed to negotiate this deal. They signed up to a rotten deal. And that's where we are now. We're hoping to get rid of that. Thank you.
Councillor Squire, please.
Thank you, Chair. When we came in 2025, we walked in with the airport up in air. We actually came as councillors to represent our people. The people of Doncaster on social media have been told that this is political, that we're against Labour, and in all truth, we've never been political about this issue with the airport. We've been trying to protect the people of Doncaster. If it went wrong, we didn't want the people of Doncaster to take the consequences of a bad deal. As we've looked at it, we now know it was a bad deal. And hopefully, like the rest of us, we want the airport to succeed. But we didn't want it to succeed or to, fail at any cost. And that's what was being put forward to us over the last few months. We have to make a decision today. And as Councillor Cridger said, we got to vote on the best of the bad deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Briggs, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members have been asked to support one of the biggest financial decisions this council has ever considered. Yet key parts of the lease were hidden from view. Councillors could not properly examine the terms, the risks, or anything else. For the council to be expected to vote on this is ridiculous. Transparency, openness, and telling the truth should never just be an option. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Frank Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can the Mayor honestly say that the original terms and conditions of the lease were 100% beneficial to the residents of Doncaster and the whole of South Yorkshire? We've heard the debate in here today how undermining this lease was. I believe that the amendment to the motion supports open transparency and accountability. That's why I support the amendment and would request that every member in this chamber do exactly the same to put the DSA on a proper footing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lawson, please.
Thank you, Chair. This Labour Mayor and her officers involved with the DSA lease should be ashamed for signing such a bad deal with Peel. Failed. She continually states she's here for the people of Doncaster. Failed. So why didn't she and her officers ensure a better deal was made in 2024? Failed. Rather than blaming Reform councillors who asked for full transparency and scrutiny from the onset to be adhered to, so the residents of Doncaster did not lose out. She failed. Full accountability and responsibility lay with this Doncaster Labour Mayor because she has the final say. She failed, and she needs to resign sooner rather than later, just like her boss. Take heed. Turquoise tidal wave is approaching fast and furious. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wood, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Mayor stated in an open letter that the motion is not about scrutiny, it is about using a procedural rule purely for political purpose. It may be worth asking why we are in this position. It is because the Mayor used a procedural rule, known as Rule 16, to bypass scrutiny and transparency that we are asking for now. 2 people passed off on the airport of 160 million, plunging the people in Doncaster into debt for 125 years. The lease was used as a political tool during the Simcoe election, helping to secure the South Yorkshire Labour Mayor. Simcoe spent hundreds of thousands of pounds having the lease checked for due diligence, supporting the reopening of airport with Doncaster's gain share monies, but probably to the benefit of all of this region, but leaving Doncaster people in a mess if it doesn't work. We always ask for transparency and scrutiny, but we're given nothing. Our own officers failed to give the information requested, so we could make an informed decision. The leak of the lease was the turning point, giving Doncaster Council sight of the terrible mess the Mayor and her party had put Doncaster in. It is because of reform and other opposition councillors is the reason why the current lease is getting renegotiated. If it wasn't for reform councillors with the support of others, the lease would have continued without proper scrutiny and transparency, possibly resulting in the dreaded Donegate 2.0. During the vote of no confidence in the Mayor, the followers of the Mayor read out speeches of why this Mayor could be trusted with money for the people of Doncaster. The position we are in now shows that this Mayor shouldn't be trusted with a bag of beans, let alone millions of pounds of Doncaster people's money. During our first ever council debate, 3 of the cabinet members said they wished they'd had a crystal ball, and if they did, they'd make a better decision for the people of Doncaster. Well, this morning before I came here, I was looking for some keys, and I didn't find a crystal ball, but I did find a glassy. And for those who don't know what a glassy is, it's a clear marble, probably the next best thing to a crystal ball, and a lot better than the one that the Mayor and the Cabinet's been used to. I rubbed it a couple of times and I got some predictions. The first is, the airport will not open on time, it will slip. The second is, the airport will not open on budget. The third is, the lease will have break clauses extended, giving Doncaster longer tie-ins to this terrible mess. It also said the Mayor won't resign because that is admittance of her failings in Doncaster. So we should also say maybe the officers that were part of this deal should also look at themselves and question why they didn't support all councillors with open and honest information that were asked for. I asked personally on 3 or 4 occasions for information, and it wasn't until the fact that it looked like this money were going to be rescinded that any answers have actually come out, and that's disgusting. The Council of Doncaster has done that to these councillors who are entitled to this information to make sure the people of Doncaster get the correct information and the correct decisions made for them. And it's interesting to see that everyone in the Labour councils hasn't even put their hands up yet, so I'm guessing they're going to come with a flood next when I've finished.
I don't want to disappoint you, but it's Councillor Ransom next. Councillor Ransom.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. I'm not against the opening of the airport, but not run by a Labour council. Councils are for services. This council has a lack of expertise and a poor track record. Housing stock, leisure facilities, market, old people's homes. I still maintain this council needs intervention from the Secretary of State.
Thank you. Before we move on, does any other member wish to speak? Aha, Councillor Lay, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here today to promote and continue.
It wasn't Councillor Nevitt, it was Councillor Kieran Lay.
Oh, really?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, what I've got to say is not been mentioned by any member in this chamber, and it's been a topic that seems no one wants to cover. Given the verified unidentified anomaly phenomena, UAP, activity, recorded directly over an immediate vicinity of Doncaster Sheffield Airport, including the 2020 cockpit video of the supersonic object and multiple 2025 to 2026 sightings in the Bawtry and Tolby areas, and including my own ward over this weekend. And in line with NASA's recommendations for evidence-based UAP oversight focused on aviation safety, I move to make the suggestion that full council establishes a temporary Doncaster UAP Overview and Safety Committee or panel. This panel committee shall coordinate with all local authorities across Yorkshire and the Humber on aerospace safety monitoring and data sharing, produce a public report within 6 months assessing any implications for airport operations and regional infrastructure, operate within existing council budget with no additional cost to taxpayer, follow best practice evidence-based approach consistent with NASA's guidance and UAP safety and transparency. This ensures Doncaster leads on emerging aviation safety considerations while maintaining full transparency and public confidence in the airport reopening. Now, these are some open questions. I will just give them to the Chamber. But to the Mayor, can the Mayor confirm that the Council has reviewed the 2020 cockpit video of the supersonic UAP flying directly over the proposed airport site, and what assessments have been made on any safety implications? Respectfully, none have been made. To Reform Group, my own party, given the local residents are clearly frustrated with the political fighting and simply want the airport open safely, does the Reform Group agree that establishing an evidence-based UAP Overview and Safety Committee or panel would help restore some public confidence rather than add further delay? To all councillors, with 93% of residents supporting the airport reopening, how do we ensure that any decision we make today protects both jobs and long-term taxpayers' interest while addressing emerging aviation safety considerations that are now documented in our own borough? To the whole Chamber, NASA has recommended that local authorities take a proactive, evidence-based approach to UAP focused on aviation safety. Why would Doncaster not want to lead the way in Yorkshire and the Humber on this issue? And my last closing question, and it's open. If we are serious about delivering a safe, successful airport for the people of Doncaster, shouldn't we at least examine all verified data, including the UAP activity recorded right here, before committing any further public money? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Nevitt, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've gone red again, so I'll speak this time. Mistakes do happen. Anyway, I'm here today to promote and to continue plans to fully reopen Doncaster Sheffield Airport. This is an incredible opportunity for Doncaster, South Yorkshire and the North. This project has been going on for nearly 4 years now, since Peel announced their strategic review. There are thousands of pages of reports, extensive due diligence and community engagement, alongside expert financial, legal and aviation advice. Every option has been explored and scrutinised. Mayor Ros Jones and her cabinet have done great work to get so far. We need to save DSA. This project is not just about providing an airport for freight and passenger flights. It's also about the wider economic opportunities, growth and job creation. Gateway East forms part of the South Yorkshire Investment Zone, enabling 75% of business rate retention in Doncaster to be reinvested back into supporting the growth of the airport. Back in November, there was cross-party consensus in this chamber to approve the £57 million borrowing facility required for the upfront investment and initial cash flow, with it all being repaid with interest to this council via gain share funding, protecting local council taxpayers. What we need is big economic stimulus, such as Doncaster Sheffield Airport, to drive forward economic growth, deliver jobs, opportunities and prosperity for our residents, our families and our neighbourhoods. Business leaders in Doncaster have spelt out the imperative to continue with this project. They appreciate the supply chain opportunities that it would provide and international trade opportunities. There is no other economic driver like this on the horizon which can deliver this level of stimulus in Doncaster. So we have a simple decision to make today. Do we support DSA now for Doncaster's future, or do you vote to kill the airport project? I'm voting to enable Doncaster Sheffield Airport to fully reopen. Under paragraph 91 of the adjoining report, risk has been identified and has been spoken about in several meetings, briefings and questions. Yes, there is risk, but work is being done to mitigate these risks as far as practicable, just like any project. However, with risk, there can also be reward. And I've not heard much about reward, but the reward is here. It's economic benefit for Doncaster. We have a plan. The lease is being renegotiated, but as per the report before us today, those negotiations are on hold because of this motion. The airport site is being improved and readied. Staff are on site and working to ensure a rapid and safe approval process in relation to statutory airspace and certification processes. I want to see Doncaster Sheffield Airport fully reopened as soon as possible. So let's crack on and deliver. Save DSA. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. An amendment to the motion has been proposed and seconded. Before we move to vote on the amendment, can I ask Councillor Ward if he wishes to exercise his right of reply on the amendment? Councillor Ward.
Chair, I will support this amendment today, but I would like to put on record that Labour's handling of this entire process has been nothing short of shambolic. The lease deal looks like a dreadful deal for the taxpayer, one that raises serious questions about competence, judgment and whether anybody in the Labour leadership actually understands the scale of risk they were signing the people to Doncaster up to. Frankly, it's an embarrassment for this administration. And what makes it even worse is that councillors and the public have repeatedly been told that there's no credible private investment interest available. Yet we now know a consortium was serious enough to write directly to the Prime Minister. So which is it? Either Labour failed to engage properly with potential private investment, or they deliberately ignored alternatives because they had already decided to push ahead with a deal regardless. Neither explanation reflects well on them. What we are seeing locally from the Labour in Doncaster is exactly the same. Arrogance, confusion and incompetence people are now seeing nationally from Keir Starmer's government. The apple clearly doesn't fall far from the tree. Big promises, rushed decisions, weak scrutiny, secretive negotiations, and the taxpayers are left carrying the risk when things go wrong. This amendment is necessary because councillors were originally expected to wade through a massive financial commitment without proper scrutiny, without proper safeguards, and without all the facts on the table. That is not good governance, it's reckless politics. So yes, I will support this amendment today because it finally puts the responsibility exactly where it belongs, on the Labour Mayor and Oliver Coppard to deliver this airport on time, on budget and under the maximum possible scrutiny from this council. I believe many residents across Doncaster are looking forward to the day reform takes control here and nationally, so common sense, transparency and proper accountability can finally return to government. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We shall now move to vote on the amendment to the motion. We need 13 people to... is there a broad agreement? Yeah. Okay, a recorded vote it is, thank you. So we shall now move to the vote on the amendment to the motion. Can I remind members not to press your buttons until I have opened the vote, and please be aware that your vote will not count when the vote has been closed. Please either press the button which is flashing green to vote yes, the button flashing red to vote no, and the button flashing blue to abstain. I am now opening the vote. Okay, now I'll close the vote. Thank you. Oh, we've crashed. Oh, it's there. Sorry, I'm looking at that monitor there and it's not on there. Okay, so we have 45 in favour, 1 abstention and 6 against. So that is, the motion is passed.
The amendment.
The amendment is passed, sorry, yes, not the motion. Thank you for that. So, the amendment now becomes a substantive motion. Does any member wish to speak on the substantive motion? Councillor Jones, please. Glyn, that is.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Fully reopening Doncaster Sheffield Airport is set to be the largest single economic stimulus in Doncaster for a generation and the catalyst for delivering the most jobs since the pits closed. That is why this council, under the outstanding leadership of Mayor Ross, is committed to successfully reopening our airport. Businesses have rallied behind the airport reopening, warning that reversing any decision would damage investor confidence and undermine economic growth across the whole of South Yorkshire and beyond. We have already seen 2 months of uncertainty caused by the motion that we had before us earlier, and this has damaged business confidence at the prime time that we should have been steaming ahead, full steam, for the contracts and orders that have been put on hold. Let it be perfectly clear across this chamber, the decision before this council today is either let the airport thrive or kill the airport. The project has rightly gone through extensive scrutiny, due diligence and independent evaluation over the past 4 years since the airport closed, and with considerable expert advice from aviation, financial and legal advisors. We haven't gone into this blindly. The motion amendment largely reinforces already agreed assurance works, meaning that we've had over 2 months of uncertainty simply to reinforce previously agreed decisions. The residents and businesses of Doncaster and South Yorkshire are watching us here today, expecting this council to put party politics aside and unite to see the full opening of Doncaster Sheffield Airport. So let us crack on and get DSA ready for takeoff. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. Councillor Kidd, please.
The decision that we took in November was to accept the need for borrowing for cash flow purposes, a simple business mechanism. It meant that we got the gain share money, which would mean that we were you know, what we borrowed, we'd be able to be paid back. I mean, we've only just started to hear some of the potential benefits of the airport. It's a recent round table hosted by Doncaster Chamber of Commerce. Many businesses reiterated their support for the reopening of the airport, emphasising the adverse impact that a reverse decision would have on investor confidence. They highlighted the obvious benefits of the airport for exporters, aviation-led companies, and those in the supply chain who are investing in Doncaster already, and those that want to invest in Doncaster in the future to use a fully reopened Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Reopening Doncaster Sheffield Airport is the largest economic opportunity for Doncaster in a generation, at a time when we are promoting Doncaster as the best place to do business. The potential benefits are enormous. Potential benefits are enormous for the communities that we represent, to get some wealth back into the area. It builds resilience in the economy and will be of significant regional importance. Scrutiny and transparency are very important, remembering that commercial confidentiality is to be expected. It's also very important that we get the right legal, technical and financial advice every step of the way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Chair. With your permission, a brief closing statement in my capacity as Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. With the amendment now carried, Overview and Scrutiny formally acknowledges the responsibility this Council has placed upon it. That responsibility is to ensure that transparency, evidence and due diligence remain central to the DSA programme for the benefit of the project itself, this authority and the 315,000 residents of Doncaster. OSMC will discharge that duty professionally, independently and diligently. Scrutiny will be thorough but constructive, focused on evidence rather than assumption and aimed at supporting robust, informed decision-making throughout the lifetime of DSA. This is not scrutiny as a break on progress, but scrutiny as a safeguard for long-term success. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Emmanuel Kraken again, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to remind Labour, as I can see they're starting to focus on long speeches again, that it's not the Council that needs to focus on reopening the airport, but it's the Cabinet, it's the Executive and the Mayor and the Labour-exclusive Cabinet that needs to focus on that. And I'd say rather than going on with the long speeches, focus on renegotiating that contract in a more acceptable manner. Thank you so much.
Councillor Jane Cox, please.
Thank you, Chair. My Labour colleagues have laboured the point that the funding is just to repay the gain share, or the gain share is just to repay the funding. The gain share money hasn't been drawn down yet because Simca are not happy with the terms of the lease. So we're kind of in the vicious circle that we were in November, which I pointed out then. We don't actually have the gain share money because we haven't actually renegotiated the lease. Now, going back to the November decision, we were assured before the November decision that that lease would be renegotiated. And at no point were we told it wasn't. And it wasn't until it was leaked we found out it hadn't been renegotiated and we're back in the same vicious circle. So perhaps we need to stop the clapping until we've actually got a lease that Simca find acceptable. Second on that is if, and we all agree, the airport would be the biggest driver for South Yorkshire for economic growth. If that is the case, why is it only Doncaster that's funding the airport? Why is it not across South Yorkshire? Why did the leaders sit in the airport and gladly sign off the funding for the gain share, but at the same time hand all responsibility over to this town? And thirdly, I think it's worth remembering that when we pay for reports, to look at the aviation, to look at financial responsibility, to look at all these things, when we are paying for the reports, people do have a tendency to tell us what we want to hear. And I think we need to bear that in mind because a lot of these reports are not independent because obviously Doncaster Council has paid for them.
Councillor Rob Dennis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to, first and foremostly, thank the Reform Councillors for U-turning on their U-turn of the airport funding. As Councillor Allen pointed out in his speech on the amendment, the original motion, the council officer notes on it did say that if the motion did pass, then the airport project would cease. Therefore, we wouldn't be reopening the airport. So thank you for the Reform Councillors for U-turning on that original motion and supporting the opening of Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Thank you.
Councillor James Church, please.
Chair, the case for reopening the airport is well understood and accepted by the vast majority of people and businesses across Doncaster and the region. Indeed, only last Friday, 80 business leaders backed the plan in place. They know that the gain share funding is a perfect fit for the airport project. And for context, over the course of 30 years, it is only 30p per week per resident. I don't think that's a risk. What other scheme could unlock such potential for the benefit of the city? And I would also like to say that I have seen over the last 5 years the tremendous hard work of the Mayor to try and get this airport reopened, not for political reasons. She's done this and worked her socks off because she wants the very best for Doncaster. And I commend her for all her hard work. Thank you.
Councillor Nick Allen, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Firstly, I just want to make it clear the Conservative group, we do support and have always supported reopening the airport. But the issue is this finance package, the one we've, or the Council has supported today, which sort of just reconfirms where we're at in November, this finance package won't deliver the opening of the airport. There are far too many risks and uncosted proposals that basically would see us having to borrow potentially more money in future. That will simply lead to us having more meetings like this one, and effectively, unfortunately, we won't always be able to borrow the money, or we would have to put taxes up some way. So in future years, I can see that as a risk, definitely. As I said in November, this deal, in fact, is like using a credit card to pay off a mortgage with no asset at the end of it. The proposed asset is the presumption that were it to make profit, everything is somehow hunky-dory. Well, it isn't necessarily the case. Even if we were making big profits, it would need to be doing exceptionally well in order for any of that to go back to the council ever. If I'll just point out, as Rob Dennis said as well, the Councillor Dennis said, or suggested, the U-turn on the U-turn. It is an interesting procedure, but I do feel this amendment should have been the motion in the first place, and that there was no need to put out there effectively a sort of guillotine motion whereby we would have just accepted the 50 million costs. That would have been wholly unacceptable and indefensible. So I'm pleased that you did see a U-turn on a U-turn, but frankly, if we'd had a better decision made in November, and the Conservative group did a vote against that package, if we'd had a better decision then, we wouldn't be needing to have this meeting now, today. If I could also just say something else as well, Councillor Lay, I believe. It's not the UFOs up above you need to worry about, it's the ones elected to Doncaster Council who make decisions like this that you need to be concerned about, frankly. And as far as I'm aware, I don't know if there's any good to come out of it, but I would like to propose making NASA a statutory consultee for all Doncaster decisions, frankly, not just this one. I think involvement from NASA, given what they've sent up to the moon recently, it would take little green men to come in and run Doncaster properly. Anyway, there we go.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, please.
Oh, sorry, apologies. Yes. What I've heard, Chair, from the other side of the chamber is
sorry,
very
it was
much...
Councillor Anderson.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So apologies. Councillor Anderson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that the attacks on the Mayor and officers has been shameful today, and I won't say what I really think on that. Also, I've heard Reform councillors say that they don't play party politics. I suggest they watch this meeting back when they get the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Aston, it is your turn. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You're too kind. What I've heard from the other side of the chamber is very much the case for Doncaster Airport, and that's absolutely fair enough. We all want to see Doncaster Airport succeed and the business community to boost and do well for Doncaster. What I've not heard is if it was such a great thing, such a good thing for Doncaster, why, oh why, were we denied access to documents we have every right to read? What was your strategy in doing that? Because in doing that, all you did was create suspicion, you created doubt, and you created mistrust. And that's one of the reasons why we're here right now. And I'd love to hear why you chose to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There are no further requests to speak on this matter, unless you're very quick. Just as I say, there you go. Councillor Wood, please.
Let's be clear. When Councillor Kidd said there's been massive opportunities to discussed today for the airport in the chambers. The comments from Councillor Lay regarding UFOs in and around the airport is not considered to be an opportunity for the airport. He was pointing out a risk. The reason this debate and decision has taken so long is due to the fact that Council wasn't prepared to have the meeting, or they didn't want it earlier due to their hope to renegotiate this lease. We called for this meeting weeks ago, and it's took till now, after many adjournments, to get it. And finally, to Councillor Allen, you hope for little green men running the council? If you look everywhere else, Labour's been replaced by the Greens, so it might be coming to Doncaster yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, please. Thank you. Councillor Wood, please. Thank you. Councillor Anderson, please. Thank you. Councillor Wood, please. Thank you. Councillor Anderson, 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 please. Thank you. Councill Councillor Rimmer, please.
I'd just like to point out to Mr Damien Allen a fantastic choice of colour for his water bottle. Thank you.
I do say it looks rather purple from here, yes. Which is a different political party altogether, but we're not going to go down that one. Mayor Ross-Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. Since the Boeing decision in November, capital has been committed for vital infrastructure required to reopen the airport. To name a few, radar, fire vehicles, airfield lighting, security equipment and air traffic control tower. All of these would cost significant sums of money simply to cancel the contracts. We have also appointed circa 50 people to roles vital to gain the necessary airspace and CAA certification. The last 2 months of uncertainty caused by the motion today has undermined confidence, and a number of staff have given backward because of the uncertainty this has created. It has also wasted a lot of officer time which could and should have been focused on getting the job done. Thankfully, we have an incredibly strong and dedicated team at the airport who have carried on making incredible progress despite all the noise, confusion and uncertainty. We also have significant business interests who are sticking with us. In relation to the lease renegotiation, as per the report before Council today, this is largely complete, and which you are aware of, but negotiations are currently on hold due to the meeting and subsequent uncertainty that it has caused. For anyone asking why not finalise the lease and then revisit the Boeing decision, the response is this: it would be financially irresponsible to sign up to a new lease with a 10-year break clause if Council voted to pull the plug. After signing that new lease, it would lead to even greater financial costs, falling on this Council on top of the 48.6 identified in the report today. The passenger and freight targets and thresholds within the renegotiated lease have reduced. I would argue that the targets are pessimistic and that we can easily achieve and surpass them. Just 2 weeks ago, we announced advanced talks with a major freight integrator business over plans which could bring up to 20 flights per week to the airport, adding up to circa 80,000 tonnes of freight per annum. Sadly, we can't name this company, but it's a household name. This company is wanting to get on site as soon as possible, and not only that, they plan to take the premises in the vicinity of the airport, bringing hundreds of additional jobs to the area. Now, this is just a single freight operator that would make the freight targets thresholds look like small beer. We are also working with other freight operators who appreciate the incredible opportunity of DSA and the excellent transport connectivity. In relation to passenger airlines, we have to maintain commercial confidentiality, and I cannot name the individual airlines other than what is already reported. It is no secret that we are working with TUI, and this is progressing positively. However, we have always said that this is the airport and can be the same as it was previously. No, it can't be. What we need to focus on larger is around more than 1 or 2 passenger airlines. Increase our freight. We are working with other national, European and international airlines, all of which is commercially confidential. And before any public announcements and contracts can be signed, we need the certainty that the project will go ahead. This is the people's airport and should not be used as a political football. It should transcend party politics. Many people have been in touch with me over the past few months from across the political spectrum. Many just saying, get on with it, get it open. Scrutiny is to be expected. The majority of what the amendment is asking for has already been committed to and just reinforces what has already been through the decision-making process. Finally, I would like to pay tribute and say thank you to the public and business community who have stuck with the project and provided the backing during this turbulent time. Together, we will flourish, we will fly, and I will deliver. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Blow, please.
I think we all need to take note of Councillor Wood's predictions here, because we've already had one come true during that speech, that the break clauses are going to be pushed out. So it's already number 4 clauses coming. Well done.
Councillor Rimmer, please. Sorry, you've already spoken. You're allowed to speak once in this. Thank you for that. Right. A little check. We're good. Right. Councillor Ward, do you wish to exercise your right of reply?
I'm all right, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we shall now move to the vote. Can I remind members not to press your buttons until I have opened the vote? And please be aware that your vote will not count when the vote has been closed. Please either press the button which is flashing green to vote yes, the button flashing red. If people, are we in favour of a recorded vote, all those? Absolutely, yes, we will then, thank you. The amendment has been voted for and passed. This is now the substantive motion. Okay, are you okay with that? Okay, so the amendment now becomes a substantive motion. That's what we're voting for. Okay. So please either press green for yes, red to vote no, or flashing blue to abstain. I am now opening the vote. Thank you. I will close the vote. Okay, so the scores are 45 in favour, 1 abstention and 6 against. So the motion is carried. And that concludes the business. But just before we do that, I would just like to say thank you, all members of the Chamber, for having trusted me to be Chair of Council. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think I've got the record for the most meetings, for the longest and the shortest, and I thank you again for that. And who knows, there might be another one before the AGM, but I'm not holding my breath on that. So, but I just wanted to say thank you for your support, and I hope you think that we've had some good debate and some good discussions. So. So, for the last time, members, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the business at today's meeting. I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.